With the 2021-2022 NBA playoffs on the horizon, the NBA standings are now shaping into their final form, and it's now becoming clear who the true contenders are this year. It's no secret that there are a number of NBA franchises that would absolutely hate to face off against the Toronto Raptors in the first round in a best-of-7 series. The Raptors are battle-tested, and the team's core has championship experience and is still in their prime. They're a nightmare matchup for pretty much every team in the league, have elite coaching, and now seem to be molding into the form that many of us hoped that they would eventually shape into earlier this season. The Raptors began 2022 in the Eastern Conference's bottom half of the standings. However, as the team finally saw some consistency in terms of team health, this, coupled with what one can finally call an actual home court advantage, helped the team soar to new heights, managing to play at a whopping 53-win pace since then, which has now helped them clinch a playoff berth for the 6th time in 7 seasons. To put the cherry on top of this accomplishment, the Raptors managed to move past the Cavs in convincing fashion to be the sole owner of the Eastern Conference's 6th seed in a win against the Pacers a few days ago. And the team was so hot against the Pacers in that first half that they literally set the arena on fire. And with that blowout victory coupled with the Cavs' loss to the 5th place Bulls, the stars aligned just right for the Raptors to find themselves in the place that they're now in. Not to mention the win against the Boston Celtics and a loss for the Bulls on the same night brought the Raptors to within half a game of the Chicago Bulls. They would ultimately be favored for seeding position, of course, because they do own the tiebreaker. But yes, this is where the Raptors find themselves now. And as a reminder, Vegas had the Raptors finishing at 37 wins before the season even started. And that's not the first time the Raptors have been underestimated. But side note, as a Raptors fan, I no longer mind when our team gets underestimated by the US media anymore. And this is because I love how stupid we make them look for it every time we prove them wrong. I dug into the numbers, player metrics, game footage, and team statistics to find out why the Toronto Raptors should be feared in the playoffs. By the way, I did just notice that only about 5.2% of you that are actually watching this video right now are subscribed to the channel. So if you haven't already, please do hit that subscribe button. It really does make a world of difference. And smash that like button while you're at it, so that this video can get to the right sets of eyes. Now, despite the fact that the Raptors lack a traditional rim protector or a true center as some like to call it, they make up for this limitation with ridiculous length across the board. And the only undersized rotation player the Raptors have is all-star guard Fred VanVleet, of course, who is still one of the league's best defenders at this position despite a size limitation. And thanks to his high ball IQ on both ends of the court, allowing him to play bigger, chase shooters around screens, cause turnovers from unsuspecting big men who are operating in the post, and much more than that. The intangibles that Freddie brings, not to mention the leadership. And then we have GTJ, who was not known for his defense, of course, upon arriving in Portland in the Norman Powell trade just a couple of years ago. He's managed to rank amongst the top 10 in steals for most of the season. And not to mention, he is also in the league's top 30 in defensive plays per foul committed. And while Freddie and GTJ man the backcourt on most nights, Scotty, OG, and Pascal hold down the fort at the front. And with a combination of Precious Achiuwa, Tad Young, and Chris Boucher coming off of the bench, former Coach of the Year Nick Nurse seems to be having the time of his life right now, mixing and matching lineups to adapt to whatever circumstances present themselves against pretty much any given team. And the luxury of having the switchability and versatility opens things right up for the Raptors on both ends of the court. And did I mention that the Raptors have multiple all-star caliber players in their lineup? Let me show you what I mean. Let's really look at this. Fred VanVleet is having a career year as heir to Kyle Lowry as the Raptors' new starting point guard. He's posting career-high averages of 20.6 points per game, 6.7 assists per game, 1.6 steals per game, on 38.5% shooting from three-point range. And then we got Gary Trent Jr., who's averaging career highs across the board and has taken leaps on both ends of the floor, especially defensively, which is something that a lot of us, a lot of analysts, a lot of basketball pundits, they're taken aback by this. What Gary Trent Jr. has shown on the defensive end. He was actually top 3 in steals. He was leading the league in steals to start off the season, and he was top 3 in steals for quite some time until his recent drop-off. He's still top 10 in steals. GTJ is balling on both ends of the court, and he's only 23 years old. Just imagine what his ceiling is. He's averaging a career high 18 points per game, 1.3 steals per game, on almost 38% shooting from 3. And then we got OG Anunoby, another young 24-year-old who's versatile, the Raptors' defensive anchor. He is having a career year, And despite having to deal with all these injuries, which seems to be something that is happening from season to season for him, but given the fact that he's a high usage player, he plays so many minutes, and he has to exert so much energy on defense and on offense now. The expectations are high for him. He has such a huge role on our team, and he has so many intangibles that he brings to the game. It's not surprising that he has to deal with these injuries. But at the end of the day, he's a warrior. OG is going to be ready when it counts, just like he was last year. And who can forget that three-pointer that he made to help us get to Game 4 when we were down 2-0 against Boston with 0.5 seconds left. The Ice in Veins badge, OG's got that. He's averaging a career-high 17.4 points per game, 5.4 rebounds, and a sizzling 1.5 steals per game. And of course, Raptor rookie sensation Scotty Barnes, who's already looking like a generational star. And I did go in depth about this in this video right here, and I will leave it for you at the end of the video. Just after you're done watching this, do take a look at that if you are interested in knowing more about what Scotty's star potential is and all the great things that he's not just capable of, but he's displayed so far. So you really do not want to miss that one. But as I was saying, our rookie sensation's averaging 15.4 points per game, 7.6 rebounds, 1.1 steals on 50.3% field goal percentage. And just side note for y'all, Scotty has the 4th largest hands in NBA history, and he has larger hands than Kawhi. A little random, but fun fact about Scotty for y'all. And then of course we got Spicy P, Pascal Siakam, who missed some games in the beginning of the season. Now even though he came back a bit cold, right after that he took off, and he never looked back ever since. And P Skills is averaging 22.2 points, 8.2 rebounds, 5.1 assists, 1.2 steals on 49% shooting from the field and 37.3% from 3. His all-around game has gotten so much better. He is slicing and dicing. He is making his shots. He is assisting. He is rebounding. The way he's been grabbing his boards, the assertiveness, the aggressiveness of his takes, the way he's reading offenses, the way he's even reading plays on defense. And to top it off, he is showing that now he can carry his team to victories. Spicy P dropped the season high, as we all know, 40 points in an OT thriller against the Celtics recently. And he's managed to quiet many of the doubters that wanted him traded not so long ago. And although the aforementioned starters have been consistent when they have played for the majority of the season, the bench production, which was the team's biggest cause for concern prior to the All-Star break, it has seen significant contributions from Chris Boucher, Precious Achiuwa, who I'm going to leave the averages of their last 10 games right here for you just to show you how much of an impact they've been having recently. And not to mention trade deadline acquisition Tad Young, who now seems to have learned the Raptors' complex systems, offensively and defensively. And check out his last few games. He's been balling out too. And of course, I'm not going to forget about Malachi Flynn, our other undersized guard. So it's Freddie and Malachi really who are the smallest guards on our team. Malachi was playing his best basketball of the season before going down with an injury. And of course, he'll be a welcomed addition as backcourt insurance come playoff time. Because we all know that Freddie's not been 100% right now because of some nagging knee soreness. So before the playoffs, it's a good sign that Malachi Flynn is probably on his way back so we can have some backcourt insurance. Not to mention recently signed two-way sniper Armani Brooks. And I say two-way because his defensive potential, just like a lot of other players like GTJ, like I was recently mentioning, seems to be unlocking now because he's with the Raptors. And Armani Brooks is fitting in like a glove already. He's providing key shooting off the bench with a surprising, yet much welcomed solid defense, as I was mentioning, and you already know you're going to get minutes on a Nick Nurse-led team if you're playing defense. And here's a big one. The Raptors are 8-2 against the Eastern Conference's top seeds this season. And given the fact that they're currently playing their best basketball of the season, it shouldn't come as a shock that this team is now garnering a reputation in the basketball world as a team that nobody wants to face in the first round of the playoffs, if we're really being honest here. Let's look at some of their strengths here as a team, shall we? The Raptors rank second in the league in offensive rebounding and lead the league in turning opponents over, all while boasting the league's top 5 transition attack. And this allows the Raptors to ultimately end up with more shot attempts than their opponents on most given nights, which is an extremely effective strategy if you're trying to score more points than the other team. Because obviously the more shots you take, the more chances you have of making them. And to add on to the NBA's fear of the Raptors, Jason Tatum of the Red Hot Celtics said this when asked about who the toughest team he has ever had to play in the playoffs has been in his career thus far.
The Toronto series was the hardest playoff series I've ever been a part of. I even told those guys afterwards, like, nobody has ever made me work as hard or made it as tough on me for 7 straight games as they have.
So now we know how Boston feels. But what about Philly? Well, Philly just lost to the Raptors last week, and Freddie and OG didn't even play that game, by the way. And despite the fact that this was just one game, the Raptors' aforementioned winning record against the top teams in the East would most certainly render the Sixers' win a true victory rather than a fluke by any means. Oh, and side note, the Kyrie and KD led Nets. I'm sure they're also hoping that they don't draw Toronto as their first round opponents. Because of course Kyrie's not going to be playing their away games in Toronto across the border because of that vaccine mandate. So if you take all these factors into account, all these teams that really don't want to see the Raptors in the playoffs, these Raptors, if they can remain healthy and continue to play with this confidence, swagger, and overall will to win that they're playing with right now, then it's no surprise why the list of teams that fears the squad north of the border continues to grow. Because the Toronto Raptors have clearly emerged in the minds of many as dark horse contenders in the second half of what has turned out to be yet another winning season for Masai Ujiri and his Toronto Raptors.